Okay, so hello there. Welcome to the MasterClass. I'm Dr. Sue, and this is Gracie, and she is the carrier of the wisdom. And she will be hosting our conversation this evening, and I'm going to try to do my best to translate what she says to you. So, right now she said, well, that was stupid. Okay. All right. So we're here at the class of the International Yoga Teacher Training for Body Awake Yoga. So we have the Body Awake Yoga Teacher Training program that has been going on for ever. For how long? For a long time. And we're at the retreat right now, going through the manual and going through all kinds of concepts that make this form of yoga very unique, in that our main concentration is to learn how to embody, truly embody your own consciousness through the practice of yoga. Now, yoga, of course, is about embodiment, but so many times the conversation of yoga and the direction of classes, etc., is not really focused on teaching you how to literally build circuits with the breath through the body, including all kinds of tiny nuances that allow your sensory nervous system to become deeply aware of the deep truth that is running through you. So often life pulls us out to the surface to such a degree that we kind of forget that we actually are what traverses deeply through this body. And so when we seek to connect, or we seek to belong, or we seek to find source, or to feel some kind of proof or evidence that there is more to life than this physical world that we're surviving and thriving and striving to thrive in, we tend to forget that all we have to do is release our previous disposition. We have to release the illusion that it's hard. We have to release the illusion that we are alone, the illusion that we have to make things happen in our lives in order to stop dispersing our energy into those worries and those concerns and those strategies, etc. So what we're doing here is dropping in and recognizing all the ways that we can learn to release our attachments and to more importantly, build the circuitry of unattachment, of being deeply engaged and deeply in love and deeply moving through life, but in an unconditional fashion. Meaning, I don't need the external world conditions to be just so in order for me to be safe, or in order for me to feel like I belong, or in order for me to feel love and joy and connection. That it isn't really dependent on the external world at all. Rather, it is dependent upon how aware my mind is of the truth of me that is really running up and down through the central channel core of my being. So once we connect in that way, we begin to have such a release and a relaxed state and disposition that we kind of learn to go through life like this, really, just kind of chilled out and available and simply present with what is happening. You know how you come home and your cat or your dog or your goldfish, whatever it is that might be in your home environment. Maybe it's beloved, maybe it is just your home itself that carries such a wonderful vibration of safety and security and wholeness for you. When you drop into those experiences, there's a certain vibration that rises in you. And it happens automatically. And because that stimulus creates that experience, we kind of have it framed up subconsciously that if it weren't for those things, I don't know what I would do. And I really want people to recognize exactly what they would do if it weren't for those things, so that they can have access to that sensation, to that experience all the time. And when we have access to that vibrational experience within us all the time, we become less conditional, less controlling, less easily agitated, less often frustrated, because people and places and circumstances aren't behaving in the way that we think they have to in order for us to have that experience. So it's about creating freedom through unconditionality. creating freedom, and the byproduct of what we're doing results in letting go of attachments. We aren't focusing on what kind of attachment we need to let go of. We're focusing on what to build photon density around, what to build a concentration of energy in, what stream of consciousness do I choose to be, and get busy being that. Because if you're willing to lead with the truth of who you are and what you know is possible, if you're willing to be the one that says, I love you first, if you're willing to be the one that says, yes, we can, before anyone else does, if you're willing to be the one that says no thank you when no thank you is appropriate, without waiting and hesitating, if we're willing to live in this way, then we begin to come into contact with where the essential true self lives. We begin to animate that true self and bring it out to the surface of life. And so we're here at this conference, which is really a hands-on, engaging workshop, learning how to do yoga asanas to the nth degree with breathing through the central channel and infusing circuitry into those positions so that we can be that integrated person off the mat in life. We're learning that when you release the hips, you're also getting your own rootedness in order. When we move into a chair pose, we're actually accentuating that rootedness from inside the core of the body, shooting our energy down into the earth. Rather than looking to the earth to support us, we're recognizing the concentrated center of the truth of who I am with consciousness, and then exhaling out into the world in every direction. From there, I begin to establish my true destiny. I really begin to establish the reality that I came here to lead. Every one of us has come here to lead something magical, something unique. We have come here to bring a new perspective. And when we are so busy trying to fit into an old perspective, or get those that are already steeped in a reality that someone before them created, and we're busy trying to get accepted or to fit in or to find our way in the midst of that, it can become very disillusioning because it's not the truth of how we're supposed to be managing this life. And so we will always feel shortchanged. We will always be controlled. We will always be frustrated. Things will not manifest as easily and rightfully as they are intended and able to manifest. So it's our job to figure out how to do that. And our purpose in this class this evening is to find all the different angles that we might come to this topic, to discuss it, to weave it together, to find circuitry of understanding so that the light can come on and the mind will stop interrupting the full-on expansion of this deep truth, who we are. And so I want to ask you guys to ask some questions, and we'll just see where the conversation takes us as always, and we'll see what Gracie comes up with. She's gone into her deep samadhi meditation now, and she kind of looks almost asleep. And it's in that state that she truly has access to the other realms in an amazing way. And then she will emit and translate that to me every once in a while, kind of moving a little bit. And I pick up on that wave, and I'm going to do my best to share with you. It's hard to translate everything that she says, though, because she's just brilliant. Okay? So let's see what we have, and let's also see if I can write anything on the board without disturbing the master. Okay? So, does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything that you'd like to plug into making sure that we can dive deep in this MasterClass together this evening? Anybody? See, the problem is Gracie answered all their questions today already, and so they got nothing. Okay, yes, here, madam.
I was fascinated by our conversation today about Drishti and what it can do for us, so maybe you could share a bit of that information.
Okay, so that question is kind of a loaded question in that it has to do with Drishti. And you might not know what Drishti is, but Drishti is the position of your eye gaze during a yoga pose. And so we'll come to that and speak about how it's relevant in all of life. in that it determines how we focus and what we focus on in life as well. So we'll dig into that. Anyone else? Questions? Yes, sir.
I'd like to know more about taking the gifts of doing the yoga practice to be more integrated in my life.
Taking the gifts of yoga, what you're learning in yoga,
to be more integrated in my life in all the areas.
Okay.
How will that benefit me?
Okay, to be integrated in life with all of your experience on the mat. That's a downward dog on the yoga mat, okay? Bear with me here. How'd I do? Okay, well, he's only got one leg, so maybe that will help. Okay, all right. You got it now? Okay. It takes me a while. Yes, here.
I'd like to know how the sacred texts are translated with the energy movement on the essential channel breath, like the Yoga Sutras.
Begin again. Begin again.
Getting big or small, how it gets translated on the mat with our energy flow in the central channel.
Okay, what's this have to do with the Yoga Sutras? Did you change questions?
Yeah, the sacred text about getting our energy big or moving it down in the central channel and how that affects how we can stretch out or our range of motion.
Okay, all right, so there is, this is pretty good really, if you think about it. I mean, I have a master on my lap here, and I'm drawing some sacred texts here. Got it? Okay. All right, got it. What else? What else? Yes?
You talked about ways to identify the false self. If you could go over how, when you've been in a pattern for such a long time, how you can recognize that you're in the false self if you're trying to change.
Okay, so how do we recognize if we're in the false self or if we're in the essential self? How do we recognize make distinctions on that so that we can shift from one to the other? How does it show up in life? Yeah, that's a false self and an essential self. You didn't know that, right? Yeah, that's how it looks. Okay, what else? Yes.
So I've been waking up in the wee hours with really great ideas or being able to verbalize my bus stop, but I couldn't catch it in a way that I could remember it later and do something with it. So I'm interested in understanding how to catch what's coming through in the wee hours.
Okay, so you wake up in the middle of the night, you have this big aha, this big revelation, and it makes all the sense in the world. Have you ever had this happen? It makes all the sense. You got it. You're like, oh, I can relax now. I got all the answers to life, right? And you go back to sleep, and you wake up in the morning, and you're like, lost it, completely lost it. Okay, so how do you maintain what's happening in the wee hours of the morning? That's probably about 3 or 4. About 3, yeah. So how do you catch that the next day when the sun comes up? Okay, got that? All right. How are we doing? Anyone else? All right, this gives us enough to get started on. So as I mentioned, this is all kind of yoga-based, and the idea here is that, are you ready, Gracie? You get your answers together. I'm going to explain how this works. All right, so when we are, we're together here in this yoga conversation, so the questions that are coming up, which have been discussions all about life and the meaning of life and how we work with life and how we utilize the experiences of life to help us awaken to this place above and beyond, kind of a bird's eye view of this whole entire physical life experience. And so these questions are kind of coming from those discussions and are very yoga oriented. So those of you that are in the yoga practice, you're going to totally dig this. And those of you that are not in a yoga practice, you're going to totally dig this, because what's going to happen is you're going to have an appreciation for yoga, I hope, that you haven't had before. And I want you to understand that here's what you can do. Those of you that are not in a regular yoga practice, you kind of know about it, but you don't really go to do the yoga thing, I want you to just, right now, from where you're sitting, I want you to stand up, and as you're standing up from your seated position, to get arranged so that you can do this, just for a second, you're going to stand up, and everybody in here is going to stand up at the same time. And as we stand up, we're just going to take a breath in, okay? So everybody stand up out of your chair right now and breathe in while you're standing up, okay? Very well done, everybody. And now everyone is going to sit down and exhale as you sit down. Just exhale as you sit down, okay? You got that? You know what you just did? Yoga, okay? It's so hard. All right, so what I want you to get is that yoga is happening all day long. You're in yoga. You practice yoga all the time. The question is, do you know it or not? If you did know it, it'd become even more fun just to do the daily activities that you're doing. When you sit down in your car, if you exhale with a conscious concentration of exhaling out the top of your head as you sit down in the car and pull your feet in and shut the door and start to turn on the key and do your thing, yoga. If when you turn to back out of the garage or the driveway, as you do so, if you would squeeze your heart and squeeze the muscles in the abdominal area, Mula Bandha, if you know what that means. If not, you just squeeze all the muscles in your pelvic bowl, and you take a deep breath in up through your body, and as you turn to look out, to back out of the car, you exhale out the top of your head. And then as you get to the point where you're going to turn around and shift the car into drive, you take a breath from overhead, and you breathe down into the body, and you exhale as you put it into drive, and you go on down the road. Things like that all the time I'm constantly working with. Because when you work with those things in that way, what eventually happens is you're constantly running energy through your body that builds an awareness at the core of your being. And the awareness for the mind to land on, that awareness will stabilize the mind. It will stop wobbling so much, it will begin to become still, and the more still it becomes, the more available it is to see what is actually happening in life versus writing a story about what it thinks must be happening because it doesn't know the whole story, and it makes something up in order to push against something, to feel some sense of resistance, which causes the mind to feel smart. When the mind feels smart, it equates that with safe, and when the mind feels safe, it slows down. So we're working really hard to ever get to a still point, and the problem is it's all based on conditionality, and so it doesn't stay still for very long. It starts having to write another story, and then another story, and another story. And the problem is that works in our life for about 30 or 40 or 50 years, and after about the 50-year mark, you just can't get away with it anymore. It just begins to take its toll. The alkaline reserve, now we're giggling, it's like, oh God, I know how old I am. All right, it's true. You just can't get away with it anymore for a couple of reasons. Number one, we eat up the alkaline reserve because we're constantly in an adrenal state. We're constantly producing acid into the system because of that, and we're using up the alkaline reserve, so we don't heal like we used to. We don't feel good anymore. We have headaches. We get achy. Things don't respond. We're not flexible. We're not pliable. We're not joyful. All kinds of things happen under acidosis conditions, and so we got to stop that bus and turn it around. In addition to an alkaline chemical balance issue that gets created, we stop trusting, we stop loving, we start arguing for our freedom. Nothing seems to work because we've written enough stories that we've boxed ourselves into a corner, and it seems that there's nowhere to go, nowhere to turn to. Nobody understands us, nothing works, etc., etc. What I want you to remember is there is a deep fountain of abundance that is what you're really made of. It's this toric flow, this energy field that is this toric flow. Could you hand me that? Pardon me, Gracie. The master sleeps. No, she's not sleeping. She's in deep samadhi meditation. Okay? So this toric flow is an abundant waterfall that is flowing down through the body, hitting the earth, rising back up through the body, coming out around the top of the head, comes back in at the root chakra, and is constantly sustaining you. It's sustaining systems of flow like the cardiovascular system, the hormonal system, the respiratory system, the endocrine system, the lymphatic system. These systems of flow are all being fed by this recycling energy. It's constantly being replenished, coming into the earth, hitting the earth, rising up through the body again, and constantly being rejuvenated. So that abundant flow is constantly available if we'll let it be constantly available. If we will let it be available and we turn our mind to it, the mind begins to sense and feel a greater sense of self, a greater sense of safety, and the next thing you know, it's not really interested in writing stories, because story writing takes a lot of energy. Have you noticed? And it's exhausting to deal with the drama of the story. So what's the story look like? It looks like tension in the body. When we end up in the protective personality because of story writing, because of this disorientation of the false self, what begins to happen is we feel tension in our body. We feel pain patterns in our body that don't heal. We have difficulty with communication. We have difficulty experiencing love and joy. We just can't seem to access them, all because we're living in the protective personality. So just about everything in your life ends up in a strained version of itself. And so it's all about this protective personality. And so we start saying more yeses, or we try new projects, or we do all kinds of things to try to satiate that feeling of being strained and stressed, or feeling lost or disconnected. And it just increases the problem. It just magnifies the gig. It magnifies the game. And so it actually magnifies the protective personality, getting us further and further away from the essential self at the core of our being. And so how do we recognize when we're in the essential self? We begin to drop into a surrender. Now, if we haven't really got turned on, if we haven't really gotten and seen the light on this whole thing that I've just described, we will continue to do this overperforming, overproductive, overprotective way of being, and we will eventually exhaust. And when we exhaust, we will surrender by default. But the key is, don't wait until default to surrender. Because if you wait until exhaustion to surrender, it's not actually a conscious surrender. It's just that I'm too tired to write a story. I'm too apathetic to write another story. So that does not equate to joy. It doesn't lead us to joy. It just leads us to not story writing just because we don't have enough energy to write another story. But it won't necessarily move us to the front side of the model. What I call the front side of the model is about you living in the essential self, in the essential self. And so there are lots and lots of ways to move into the essential self. And of course, one of them is yoga. Yoga on the mat, of course, is building circuits. It puts your body into sacred geometries that allows energy to move up and down through this body in a natural fashion. It accentuates it naturally. And so if this natural flow is being accentuated and we're bringing consciousness to that, we build a new way of being. We build a new identity. And then when we walk off the mat, that new identity can roll out into confidence in making a decision in your career, confidence in making a decision in your relationship, confidence in making a decision about how you operate around self-care, taking care of yourself, honoring yourself, noticing, making it matter that you take time for yourself, that being a priority that is just not going to be compromised because you have the circuitry in place to keep one eye on the inside on this essential self. So the question here was about, how do I take what I acquire on the mat out into life? How do I let it show up and reveal out in life? So it can't not. The more it's so ironic. We want to go out into the world and make something happen, be successful, change things, do this, do that, make more money or have it be easier or make a more significant difference in the world or have some dramatic thing shift. And we are so trained to perceive that as if, it's going to have to be hard. It's going to be hard, and I'm going to have to get up earlier, and I'm going to have to work later, and it's going to have to be intense. And if it's not intensely dramatic, how could it possibly be significant and important, and how could I possibly have earned the good nature that will come into my life after that? And that is all a pattern of circuits that is set up at the subconscious level because our parents' told us that it was that way because it was that way for them. There's a little fly that woke you up. Yeah? Oh, great. Okay. She'll be back. All right. So what we have to do is recognize that there's another way that these things can land. And so one of the most significant things that we can do on the mat that will allow off the mat to shift more gracefully, more easily, and more readily is to, while on the mat, get yourself together. Like, quicken, come in, allow yourself to feel in your heart of hearts what is vulnerable, what is real for you in this moment, what don't you know. If it brings emotion up, you stay present with the emotion. If tears run down your face, know that you are hooking up circuitry and going through something that you used to go around. And because you used to go around it, you had to get busy and make things happen because you weren't connected to the true you. And when you're connected to the true you, that fountain of energy that we're talking about rushes through your life situation. It can't not. That's the way it's designed. So the way to get this rushing through your life situation off the mat is to allow it to rush through your system on the mat. When you're bending and twisting and stretching and going through these motions and putting your body in these geometries that are facilitating this natural healing energy flow. The healing energy pierces into the gunk and goes right through it and starts to build straight pathway circuitry instead of us having to go around things and work so hard to make life happen, to survive, to feel safe. So on the mat, you slow it down and you let yourself come present and feel. Now, it might be hard if you're new to yoga and you don't know how to do the poses, etc. When you get to a pose that you already know how to do, then you focus on dropping in, letting it feel good, instead of being proud of this pose that you do so well and wanting other people in the class to see how good you do it, or those kinds of things, or worrying about if you're doing it right and comparing yourself to someone else and seeing that you can't do it like that, and all that stuff that happens in the distracted, dispersed world. On the mat, of all times, come home to yourself. Allow yourself to be with you. And what I mean by that is allow your mind to find you, to find your heart. Allow your mind to find your heart. Allow your mind to find the real you. And you'll know that you did because you'll feel it. There will be a felt sensation that shifts because that connection has been made. Once that connection is made on the mat, that connection will serve you out in the world. A new business will take off with no business strategy necessarily. It doesn't mean don't go make your business strategies, but don't fight your way to the top. You don't have to. In fact, if you do, you'll never stay. It will crash, it will collapse, because the world isn't built to be sustained on such false structures. We see them collapse around us all the time. You know, our world is a little crazy right now, and it is the case that at least half of the country is upset every day about something or something else, or maybe half of the country is upset about the other half being upset, or sometimes families are split. You know, this is happening. You know, there's someone in your family who's upset about something. You're upset about their families being upset. So if you weren't upset about the news, now you're upset about the family being upset about the news. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so I want you to know that that crazy is the stir. That crazy is the stir that the Vedas, the Upanishads, the oldest recorded history of how to manage yourself, how to awaken yourself, how to stabilize yourself, always have talked about crazy. Not getting caught up in the material manifest world, not getting caught up in what's out there thinking that it's real, because it's not. While it's crazy, it's not real. Isn't it so crazy that it seems like this can't be real? It's so crazy, this can't be real. That is serving our culture right now. It's certainly serving our country right now. It's serving us to see that, wow, this is amazing. It's so amazing, it can't possibly be true. And what it will ultimately do, as it has done in humanity since the beginning of time, is that it will invite you inward. the instructions have always told us to come inward. And when you come inward, you begin to concentrate your energy. And when you concentrate your energy and search into the heart space and search into your belly and trust your gut and then move into that space that you're observing and trusting and noticing, move into it and become that, merge with it. When you do that, you now not only have access to this abundant wisdom, you remember that you are that abundant wisdom. It's who you are. It's the truth of who you are. And so as that begins to be remembered, then what happens after that is the whole system starts to settle. And the way you get that to happen is to come into yourself, quicken. Notice how often you disempower, how often you worry, how often you think, how often you write a story, how often you fill in the blank, how often you wonder, is this okay? Is that going to be okay? Should I do this? Should I do that? Just stop. Stop. Come into your core. Start breathing up and down your central channel. Notice if there's a charge in your body. Notice that those of you that are in the coursework, you know what to do with that charge. You know what to do with that to build the circuits, to stabilize that, and to stay in that stabilized fashion. If you're not in the coursework, get in the coursework so that you can learn how to do that, because it will change your life. What happens then is this dispersed energy field becomes organized. It becomes empowered, it becomes anchored, it becomes grounded, it becomes awake, and it becomes expressed love in this world. And if our culture could stand anything right now, it could stand a shot of a dose of a population that could go out into the world, and no matter what was happening, they could stand in love unconditionally and lead with love and show a loving way to handle every situation. And when enough of us do that, enough more of us begin to respond to that, even if we don't know why or how it's happening. It just begins to pick up momentum. And we begin to do that as the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras, these oldest texts in the world, that have been documenting for us what is required for sanity, what is required for transformation, what is required for illumination. And one of the 8 most important things is that we withdraw our senses, we come inward, we start paying attention and living from this inner world. Instead of wanting someone to tell you something, you say it to them. Instead of wanting someone to give you something, you give it to them. And instead of wanting to receive, you give it to yourself. And you allow your mind and your body and your breath, the soulful self, to have a really awesome bonded relationship. When that awesome bonded relationship has a life and has a breath and is out walking and living in the world, you show up as a source of undying energy, a source of relentless empowerment. You show an ability to forgive and to be offering up blessing, to be beyond forgiveness and living as though forgiveness was never necessary, because you recognize that every single thing that is happening is serving your own awakening. It's revealing to you your bigness. If something is feeling overwhelming to you, it is revealing your bigness. It isn't smashing you out. It's showing you you're even bigger than this, because nothing crosses your path that you can't handle. And so when these things happen that are so huge and so overwhelming and so disorienting that we don't even sleep well, we recognize that this is spinning out of control because I'm perceiving it wrong. It's not that the circumstances are wrong. I'm perceiving it wrong. So as I begin to perceive it as my friend, then it's starting to show me my greatness. It's starting to show me that I am huge compared to some of the things that are happening in my life, because they wouldn't be happening if I couldn't handle it. So what it's trying to show me is my bigness. It's not trying to show me my smallness. The universe doesn't operate that way. Nothing in the universe operates that way. So don't confuse that if you're awake in the middle of the night, that you're restless sleeping because you're upset and worried, and that's the story. That might be how you're approaching it in this moment, but there's a whole other way that you could be interpreting what's happening in your life. You're awake in the middle of the night so that you can change this perspective. Because in the middle of the night, there are fewer distractions in the outer world. No one's bothering you, no one's calling you, no one's texting you. There's no immediacy of your need to go to the email and start responding, and so please don't. Don't miss this sacred moment. Between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, it's a sacred hour. Cultures all around the world, indigenous cultures all around the globe, have honored that as the hour of the gods. The gods and the goddesses come alive, come awake. Your system is in an expressive state of transmutation and reveling in the benefit of every good thing that happened that day. And it has sorted through it and has already been in an elimination cycle in order to get rid of the toxins. And it's just kind of hanging out in this, the work is done kind of space. Right then and there, everything is in your favor. Everything is in your favor to allow you to get some good circuit building work done. The energy codes is about circuit building. And if you're overwhelmed, it's because you don't have the circuits to handle your bigness. And so you're in rejection of your bigness, and it starts to spin you out in an overwhelm, in a lie, in the illusion. So if you're awake in the middle of the night, believe me, it is so that you can take that silent, precious, pristine, sacred moment to heart. You can take the mind to the heart. And you're supposed to be awake at this moment, or you would be asleep. So the fact that you're awake means your system wants you to lucidly and consciously begin processing what is happening. So do not waste that sacred hour by writing a story, figuring out what you need to say tomorrow to these people, why they did what they did, over and over and over. Everybody else does that. You have plenty of practice doing that. Take this sacred moment and do something different with it. Do something so profound that it will be anchored and available to you when you wake up, when the sun comes up, that you won't lose it, you won't miss it. So what you do is the work of the coursework, which I can't go into here, but I do in the coursework, and you know what to do. You take it to the body and you do the work. Right then, when you have the revelation, when the aha moment comes and you're like, oh, I get this. You take that to the body and you anchor it in the middle of the night so that when you wake up, that is alive and well for you, accessible to you, able to be interpreted again, because it's here. It's a part of your living, breathing system. It hasn't floated away somewhere. It's staying right in here. You have access to it. And as it filters through the system, you can translate it by doing the work of this circuit building process in the middle of the night when you're having the aha. It will remain present for you when you awaken in that way. So if you don't know what that means, we teach that in level 1. So it's easy to get practiced on that with some techniques that will serve you forever just by coming to a level 1 of the coursework, if you're interested in that, if you don't know. And so we also had a question about Drishti. And Drishti is a D-R-I-S-H-T-I. Drishti means where your eyes are gazing in a yoga pose. You're supposed to put your arm here and your leg here and rotate your spine this way and rotate your shoulders open, your heart this way, and then turn your head this way and then look this way, or put your hands down this way and stand in this kind of a position down in downward dog, and you're supposed to look a certain place. Look at your navel or look up ahead or do these kinds of things. And that plays as significant of a role, which we were talking about today, that plays as significant of a role in the efficacy of your yoga pose when you start breathing through the body in awakening you to this deep essential self. It plays as significant of a role as where to place your hands and whether you're bending over at the waist or whether you're lunging forward on one foot, etc. The eye position, because it activates your brain in a certain way. There are brain centers that are high places where we integrate all the information that we think and all the information that happens from the outer world and all the information that we remember and all the information that comes up as this gut feeling. All of that comes together in these little areas that are like mixing bowls up here in these high brain centers. And we can illuminate those areas where all that mixing happens with some high frequency energy of possibility, of a breath of fresh air into those areas by using Drishti, eye position, in a certain fashion. So right now, if you just look up, just don't move your nose, but look up with your eyes. If you look up with your eyes, there is a sense of tension behind your eyes in a certain fashion. So where that tension is behind your eyes becomes obvious to you because you've moved your eyes into that drishti, into that position. Okay? Because your eyes are in that position, you could come into awareness of this place in the center of your head. And the significance of that place in the center of your head is that that's where these little mixing bowls are that are churning all this information and allowing you to come up with a new idea, allowing you to actually actualize a possibility of responding differently this time in that ugly situation in your life. Responding differently with a different conclusion in your own heart and mind this time when you run some story or scenario through your mind. You go to a positive outcome instead of a negative one. You go to stop trying to figure out why it's so bad and what's so wrong, and you just get on with it being good. You just get on with leading with what you know is possible. And you can break that pattern of your own protectivism by illuminating these high brain centers. So in the energy codes, what we're teaching is how to build this foundation underneath all of this high brain area that's so stable that when we go to the mixing bowls, they don't fall off the table because the table's wobbling so much. And that's what happens in life. The foundation underneath this is so wobbly that we come up with a good idea and we can't remember it the next day. We have an aha and a revelation where all these great ideas come together and we can't find it the next day to save our soul. Right? Well, trust me, your soul doesn't need to be saved. It's your mind that has an issue. Okay? So what we want to do is to learn how to save the mind. And the way we're going to save the mind is to let it rest more. It's fatigued, it's exhausted, it is under the gun, it is defensive, it is protective, and it's scrappling to find another way to get through another day. And that exhaustion is actually in your favor if you let it be. If you let it be in your favor, it will route you towards surrender. And if it can route you towards surrender, you'll get there semi-voluntarily. Granted, the impetus was inspired by exhaustion, but if you can just go ahead and choose before you actually collapse, if you can just go ahead and choose to love and to think less and to strive less and to accomplish more and to trust, here's what happens. If you sit back inside yourself, you allow this system to flow in its robustness. If you lean forward in life and are trying all the time, make this happen, you step out of the channel. You step out of the channel. So imagine that there's a spotlight overhead, beaming a spotlight down on you. You have to stay in that spotlight. It's not coming at you from an angle. It's straight overhead and it's beaming right down on you, right down through the core of your being. And if you stay in that channel, you can pick up on this abundant flow. And if you step out of the channel to go try or to push, to force or to make it happen, you're going to run out of your resources because you're not being replenished by this waterfall of abundant energy that is constantly available. The reason it is so in your favor is that it happens to be the real you. Okay? So it's like it's totally on your side. In fact, it is your side. In fact, it's you. Okay? So it's that connected. So as we sit back against our spine, so if you're sitting against a chair right now, just sit up straight and don't lean against the chair. Just don't lean against the chair for a moment. Now, strong in the spine and soft in the body. Strong in the spine and soft in the body. In fact, if you can, just drop your hands down by your side. And maybe if you're on a wide chair at home or whatever, your hands might not go very far, but we're sitting in more narrow chairs here, and our hands can just kind of drop all the way down. So right now, let the gravity of this earth plane, let the gravity of the third dimension feel heavy on your body. Let yourself feel the heaviness. Let your body feel the effects of gravity. Now stand under that spotlight. Feel the effects of gravity. Now open the top of your head. And keep your eyes open, because you need your eyes open in life, okay? Just for this time, for this moment, we're going to build some circuits that allow you to stay engaged and feel the true you. So now you're feeling the effects of gravity. You know, in order to feel the effects of gravity, you have to relax your body. So resist gravity right now. You follow it? You don't feel gravity nearly as much right now. It doesn't feel like heaviness in your body. It just feels like work. You follow? Now, relax your body, drop it. Let your body feel the effects of gravity. When you can feel the effects of gravity, you have released the outer body. Now, the outer body is dropping toward the earth. Now, the inner self, the essential self, at the core channel of your body is very effervescent. It's very light. It's such high frequency energy, it's actually not even physical yet. It's as airy as the breath. It's as free-flowing as the breath. In fact, spirit in the body is the breath in the body. So the breath can kind of equate to that, but it's even a higher frequency than the breath itself. Because you can dial into such a high frequency, you don't even have to breathe to be alive. That was demonstrated to us a few thousand years ago, and it's called a deep state of samadhi. Gracie showed it to you just moments earlier. Right? Maybe not. Okay, so now what I want you to do, feel the effects of gravity, open your crown, just open your head, open the top of your head. How do I do that? Make it up. Just open it. Now your shoulders are dropping. You feel the earth pulling down. Now come into the central channel. If you come in with your conscious concentration deeply enough to the center of your body, there is a portion of you, there's a frequency and a location, a frequency and a location that you will access that actually feels like it's rising up. So the body's dropping down, but you keep relaxing and relaxing and relaxing and relaxing. And there's a part of you deep inside that is actually rising up. Those of you that know how to do Mula Bandha, do Mula Bandha, squeeze it, but lift it up. Lift up Mula Bandha, just have that be the only thing that you're doing. And you may be able to feel this energy deep at your core lifting up. Anybody feel this? You tracking that? If you can't feel that at home, then bring your hands up on top of your head and press down. Press down. Now come inside you. Come inside the body with all of you and press up against your hands. Press down with your hands, but come inside the body and press up against your hands. Now step back into the spotlight. Step back under that beam of light. Mula Bandha, lean back against your spine, press up against your hands. The hands are pressing down. Can you feel the part of you that's pressing up inside of there? Now, as you release your hands, you'll feel it even more. You feel that part of you rising up? That's how we begin to, one of the many ways, we begin to train the sensory nervous system to be able to perceive the subtle self. Because the subtle self, the real you, this essential self is rising right up through the center of this toric field. It's measurable, it's real, it's a very real thing. This isn't a symbolic drawing here. This is completely measurable. And what's happening here is the energy that is rising up is coming up and out the crown, and that's what's cycling around here. So when we allow ourselves to feel the effects of gravity and keep subtling down the mind, the more subtle the mind becomes, the more it can catch the wave that's rising up. But if we're dialed in to this gross, dense world of stimulus response, have to, strategizing, defending, arguing, making our point, succeeding, all of that, we can't perceive it when we need it most. Because we need it most when it's time to make decisions. We need it most when it's time to create a reality, right? Which is all the time, right? We need it most when we're interpreting life from this perspective and choosing our path. So we need to be able to learn how to dial into that subtle, subtle frequency. And as we do, we begin to see that the whole of this story is, there are 6 more ways that life is giving us evidence that it's all in our favor. We have 6 more topics here that have shown us that we can interpret these things from the perspective of everything is serving my own awakening, my own integrative process. And there are no exceptions to that. You know, when we get into life situations, we get into being pregnant when we don't want to be, getting divorced, losing jobs, trying to make decisions. Do I hire? Do I fire? Do I leave the business? Do I do something different? What do I do with my kids who are doing drugs or cutting themselves, or these amazing life circumstances that seem so big. They seem so big. The more circuitry we have in place to sense and feel this robust energy flow. This is like Niagara Falls happening here. Have you ever been to Niagara Falls and seen the mist that rises from the splashing? That mist comes up to the top of the fall. That's the photon pattern of this same field. It's like this. It's a big splash that's spraying around. That's how powerful you are when you land here in this dimension with the majesty of the stream of consciousness that you are. And so if the reality of the outer world seems to be overwhelming, it is because we haven't learned how to dial our attention and our perceptive field onto this subtle, misty reality that is pure in its presentation, that is here for the life experience. So we're here to master some life experiences, and the more challenging they are, the more it is referencing to us that we are much bigger than we thought we were. And it's a circuit building issue. So in the Energy Codes coursework, that's what we're doing. In this yoga teacher training, what we're doing is learning how to do the yoga in a fashion that builds this kind of knowingness robustly in our own systems. And we're learning how to teach other people to do the same thing. So the Body Awake yoga teacher training is the on-the-mat version of the Energy Codes and how to build and integrate those things even faster. So have that. All right, how'd we do? Did we cover all the bases? Here, two. Yeah. Awesome. All right, so do you guys have anything else you want to add to this? You want to share with the world at this moment? Any little pearls of wisdom? Come on. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. That works. Pardon? The pearly gates. That's a long story. Okay, so one of the things that we do in the Energy Codes is talk about all these things that we're so familiar with hearing about from the Bible or the Quran, or whether we grew up in a Christian environment, in a Jewish environment, in celebrating Kwanzaa. It doesn't matter. All of the traditions have their stories. And their stories are all trying to teach us about the user manual of the body and the mind and the spirit. And we're cutting to the chase and just getting to the common theme of all the stories so that we can be kind of multi-denominational in every conversation that we have. Because spirituality should not divide us, and culture should not divide us, and our geography should not even divide us. Our history should not divide us or determine our future. And the color of our skin or the preferences in our lives, the things that bring each individual joy and a feeling of love and contentment should never divide us. And the way that I know for us to be the unifying force in the world is to build this conscious community that we are doing through the Energy Codes, and doing it not from just a philosophical, conceptual place, but from a place of embodiment, so that we build the circuitry to be that out in the world. And so in this particular yoga teacher training, we are infusing ourselves in what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it breathes like, how it looks and how it directs its attention, and what it perceives to be true and not true, what is real and what is relative, becomes the focus of our attention, so that we build photon density, meaning we build conscious concentration at the core, so that we can pierce the veils of all the illusion of the divisive patterns of our culture today that have been present in humanity since the beginning of time, because that is the nature of this dimension. That's the purpose. This is practice ground. It's always going to present some opportunity for us to take duality and create unity. And so it is with that we begin every course that we teach, and we begin every day of each class that we're engaged in, from this perspective of how to become that which we know, deeply feel and sense and have longed for to be true in our lives. So join us sometime in the Energy Codes. If you haven't been around for a while, come back in, plug in. If you were just in a course with us in Cancun or any of the other locations that we've been in the last minute and a half, turn around and share it with a neighbor that might not ever be exposed to what you've come upon, and change their life. Why not? It only takes a moment. It's just a breath away. All right? Blessings, blessings. Let's give blessings to everybody around the world that listens to the MasterClass. It is our great divine honor and pleasure to celebrate life with you. Namaste. Namaste. Gracie must be on call. She went somewhere else to do some service somewhere else because we haven't found her. So we'll see you again soon.